We all know global warming isn't just some slow, abstract rise in temperature, right? It's a cascading series of compounding threats. In this explainer, we're unpacking exactly how massive, macro-level climate shifts are creating devastating, hyperlocal realities, specifically for developing agrarian nations. We're going to dig into the hard data and see how these shifts literally rewrite the rules of daily human survival.
Let's kick things off with a harsh reality that, frankly, often gets glossed over. While yes, the entire planet is warming, the survival stakes, they are vastly different depending on where you happen to live. This is absolutely not a uniform experience. Developing nations with economies deeply tied to natural cycles are standing directly on the front lines here, and they're taking the hardest hits.
To really understand the mechanics at play, we're going to break this down into four foundational pillars: threats to food security, the escalating water crisis, rising seas and vanishing coasts, and finally, ecosystems at the brink. For each of these, we'll establish the global consensus before zooming right in on India as our primary real-world case study.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Threats to Food Security, focusing on global agricultural shifts and those regional realities. Check out this stark contrast. If we look at a moderate warming scenario, say a 1 to 3 degrees Celsius bump in mean temperature, the effects are wildly split. Temperate regions might actually see a short-term boost in crop yields, but in the lower latitudes, especially the seasonally dry tropics, even a 1 or 2 degree bump is projected to absolutely devastate major cereal crops. It's a massive geographical inequality right out of the gate. And the global consensus on this is crystal clear. The IPCC's third assessment report explicitly warns that the poorest countries will take the heaviest hits. Look at the projection for South Asia. We are staring down potential losses of up to 10% in crucial staples like rice, millet, and maize by 2030. Think about that. That's a massive blow to food security for billions of people, and it's happening in just a few short years.
Zooming in on India, we can see exactly why this is so terrifying. A huge chunk of India's arable land is completely rain-fed. In fact, nearly 70% of their total annual rain comes from the summer monsoon. But the data predicts a serious decline in that summer rainfall by the 2050s. This directly threatens the Indo-Gangetic Plains, literally the breadbasket of the country, with severe drops in productivity. Plus, it creates this vicious cycle. Hotter temperatures mean crops need more fertilizers just to survive, which jacks up costs for farmers and pumps even more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
That agricultural strain feeds directly into our second pillar, the escalating water crisis, stretching from melting glaciers all the way down to groundwater depletion. The absolute crux of this issue is the imminent threat to our ice caps. The International Commission for Snow and Ice captured this perfectly and, honestly, terrifyingly. They found that Himalayan glaciers are shrinking faster than anywhere else on Earth. The timeline? They suggest we could see a complete disappearance by 2035 if current trends hold. 2035.
And this highlights the sheer scale of the danger. We aren't just talking about a few isolated mountains losing their snowcaps. These glaciers are the primary dry season water sources for the biggest river systems in Asia: the Ganges, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, the Yangtze, the Mekong. We were talking about the freshwater lifeline for a staggering percentage of the entire human population, all relying on ice that is quite literally vanishing. When you map this out on a timeline, it reveals an incredibly deceptive pattern. Over the next few decades, as that glacial melt accelerates, we'll actually see increased summer flows in these rivers. It might even look like an abundance of water for a minute, but it is a total false hope. Because once we hit that 2035 threshold and roll into the 2050s, those glaciers are gone. The flow drops off a cliff, leading to a catastrophic, widespread freshwater shortage across Central, South, and East Asia.
Grounding this back in India's current reality, an unbelievable 83% of available water usage there goes strictly to agriculture. As the population inevitably grows, the demand for food grows right alongside it, meaning water is being pumped out way faster than the aquifers can recharge. Groundwater levels are already in a freefall, totally compounding this looming surface water crisis.
The urgent takeaway here is this target number: 68%. By the year 2050, India has to somehow figure out how to slash its agricultural water demand to 68% just to maintain basic water security amid these shortages. And they have to pull that off while feeding an ever-growing population. It is a logistical nightmare. Which brings us to Section 3, rising seas and vanishing coasts, driven by both thermal expansion and disappearing land.
On a macro level, the projections here are staggering.
If global temperatures increase by 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, we are looking at up to 330 million people either permanently or temporarily displaced by flooding. The sheer volume of human displacement is going to completely redraw our coastlines and push massive populations inland, which will push global infrastructure to the absolute breaking point.
When we map those global sea level rises onto specific coastal states in India, those abstract statistics become very real, localized disasters. In Goa, they're facing the loss of massive stretches of beach, which would completely gut their crucial tourist infrastructure. In Mumbai, densely populated spots like Versova face severe, regular inundation. States like Orissa are bracing for more frequent and far more violent cyclones, while folks living in the Ganges Delta are stuck dealing with intense, constant flood risks.
And we have to remember, the impact goes way beyond just losing land. As sea levels creep up, the secondary impacts are brutal. Saltwater percolates inland, infiltrating and basically ruining precious drinking water tables. Plus, all those displaced coastal residents, they're going to create unimaginable rapid urbanization pressures on inland cities. And offshore, rising temperatures threaten saline-sensitive coral reefs, which kills off the microscopic plankton and fish stocks that entire human livelihoods depend on.
All of this naturally leads us to Section 4, Ecosystems at the Brink. Here, we're looking at biodiversity loss from the highest mountains right down to the oceans.
The World Wildlife Fund paints a pretty grim global picture here. They point out that species, from the tropics to the poles, simply cannot migrate fast enough to keep up with the rapidly changing temperatures of their historic habitats. Because of that, 1/5 of the world's most vulnerable natural areas may be facing a literally catastrophic loss of species. Zooming back into India's incredible biodiversity, we're seeing some highly destructive phenomena pop up as a direct result of these ecosystem shifts. A terrifying example is GLOFs, or glacial lake outburst floods. As the Himalayan glaciers melt rapidly, they leave behind these massive, unstable lakes of meltwater that can suddenly burst, sending catastrophic flooding downstream. These outbursts completely tear through fragile mountain ecosystems, destroying forests, farms, and lives along the borders of neighboring nations.
And it is for sure not just the mountains. Literally every biome is feeling the squeeze. In Rajasthan, desertification is expanding, but it's altering the climate so weirdly that it actually causes bizarre events, like the totally uncharacteristic 2006 floods in the desert district of Barmer. Out on the coasts, mangrove wetlands, which act as vital carbon sinks and natural flood barriers, are severely at risk. And marine ecosystems aren't just dealing with heat, they're suffering from ocean acidification due to rising dissolved carbon dioxide, which triggers massive coral bleaching.
As all this data shows, everything is just deeply interconnected. Whether you're looking at the Indo-Gangetic Plains up north or the peninsular rivers down south, life in this region lives or dies by the timing and reliability of the monsoon. India relies heavily on these seasonal rains to feed its people, water its crops, and sustain its rich biodiversity. But climate change is taking a sledgehammer to those historic, predictable patterns. So, as we wrap up this analysis, we're left staring at a deeply unsettling reality. When an entire nation's food and water supply relies on a delicate, localized climate balance, a balance that the data clearly shows is rapidly breaking down, how on earth can the global community possibly prepare for the interconnected, cascading fallout? It's a massive question, but it's one we absolutely have to face head-on.